All right, but we will get started. Thank you for everyone for joining us on your Friday. We've got a lot to cover through, so I won't spend too much time on this, but for most of us who are here today on this webinar, you're here because you are using LawPath in some capacity, or you're friends with people on our network. And so for basically those of us who haven't heard of what LawPath does, we're an online legal service provider primarily aimed at helping small businesses just like yours being able to get access to all of the legal tools that they need to stay compliant and get ahead. So we've got end-to-end contract management that we offer, a range of different business registration and legal registration services, and legal advice available on demand through our platform as well. And to date, we've managed to help over 200,000 businesses across Australia save over $100 million in legal fees. So we're really aimed at trying to help businesses to be able to get that support for a fraction of the cost and the complexity. And so how we can look to help, we are constantly adding and changing the resources that we have on our resources hub. There's new up-to-date information that's coming through on there around, considerations around remote working, vaccinations, employees, handling all of the different situations that come with lockdowns in different states. And in addition to this, just another one that I wanted to bring out is that we actually are part of an initiative that can get you access to a rebate through the Victorian government through a digital adaptation program. So this is something that we have the ability to be able to provide you, where you are able to get the costs of your plans that you receive with us claimed back. So this is one that you can look at. If you go to the link there, lawpath.com.au/big program, you can check your eligibility off and see if that is something that is available to you. But we will get into that a little bit later on the webinar as well. But I'm going to pass now on to our presenter for today, Pat, who's going to run through everything that you need to know about Victorian business support that's available right now. Pat, I'll leave it to you. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And yeah, if anyone has any questions throughout, please just ask through the Q&A, and Tom, feel free to interject if something's relevant to what I'm talking about. So just a disclosure, the advice is general in nature and should not be relied upon without getting advice from an independent expert. And we do encourage you to speak to LawPath or POP if you have any questions in relation to your grant. So my name is Patrick Sargent. I'm the CEO of POP. We're a chartered accounting firm and we're based in Sydney, but we service businesses right across Australia. And we specialize in business advisory, tax compliance, bookkeeping, virtual CFO services. So I'll just touch on sort of a brief outline firstly. There's been some new announcements for some new support for Victoria, in particular the Small Business COVID Hardship Fund. So today I'm going to go through the eligibility of that. I noticed when Tom mentioned there was 70% that hadn't yet received the business cost assistance. I believe this grant will be, really relevant to your situation. So this specific grant covers businesses that aren't in that specific list of affected businesses that were released previously for the business cost assistance grant. So I'll run through that. There's a continuity fund grant coming, which is sort of tacked on to the business cost. And there's a bunch of other things. So they've increased the licensed hospitality venue fund. There's some Alpine business support. There's some commercial rent relief for there's sort of payments to landlords in lieu of sort of reductions in rent. And there's some payroll tax things as well. So this is the one, I believe this was just released potentially yesterday. So it's quite new. It's a $10,000 grant payment. And it's basically for businesses who've had a 70% or greater reduction in revenue. And I think you've got a poll happening there. Is that correct, Tom?
Yeah, that's correct. We just had another poll launch around just telling the new businesses that are coming in about the industry that they're in. Just an update on the the assistance grants, the latest number we had was that 23% had received it, 73% had not.
Okay, excellent. Well, this grant's really relevant then for these businesses that hadn't received the business cost assistance. There's a few eligibility requirements, which I'm going to be running through. So you need to be located in Victoria. As a direct consequence of COVID-19 restrictions, you need to have had a 70% or more decrease over a 2-week period comparable to 2019. There is a couple of alternative circumstances, which I'm going to touch on. You need to have had payroll not higher than $10 million on an ungroup basis. One of the key things is you need to be registered for GST on, I think on, should be before, sorry, 28th of July, 2021. So you do need to be registered for GST, and you need to have an ABN, and you need to be registered within the state. A couple of other things. If you have employees, you need to be registered with WorkSafe Victoria. Now, that could mean work cover insurance. So if you have employees, generally you'd register for work cover insurance. And you also need to be supporting your workers in respect of if they're requesting paid leave entitlements, and helping people through, your employees through this period. So a couple of key things. How do you demonstrate the 70% turnover decrease? Basically, what you do is you check a 2-week period from the 27th of May until the 10th of September, and you compare it to 2019. So what you're trying to do is find your most adversely affected 2-week period where you've got the lowest turnover compared to 2019. Now, I'll go through a couple of things because it does mention it should be a normal trading period is what they say, and I'll go through that in a bit more detail. If you had a 2-week period that matched and you had a 70% decrease, that's the most simplest way to do it. However, if the 2 weeks in 2019 wasn't suitable, I'll run through that as well. You need to have a qualified accountant provide basically a letter that runs through verifies the decrease in turnover for those periods. If you don't have a qualified accountant, you can still apply. However, it's a different process. So you register your interest and then they get back to you and let you know how that process is going to work. You can only register for one ABN. So if you have multiple businesses, you can register for each ABN if that specific business meets the requirements. A couple of key details is you can't have received other grants, specifically these grants noted. So this specific grant is tailored to businesses who weren't eligible for the initial business cost assistance. So the businesses that were in the highly impacted lists, and they were like the hospitality businesses, the retail businesses, tourism, the transport. So there's a list of businesses which we'll share the link within the presentation, and you can check. If you didn't receive the business cost or these other grants and you had the 70% decrease, you should be applying for this grant to get the $10,000 payment. So you can apply for this now. It is a 15-day turnaround time that they're advising. May take a bit longer, given they're probably going to get a fair bit of volume. So as an example here, the impacted period is 27th of May to the 10th of September. And so what you'd usually do is you'd find a period in 2019 to test. I've highlighted, they've stipulated it needs to be a similar time of the year, unless there are exceptional reasons as to why a different time is chosen. So if you did a 2-week period like the 1st of July to the 14th of July, and you compared that to 2019, that's the simplest way. If 2019 during those 2 weeks wasn't a good period, it's saying here you can have slight adjustments for the trading days. So if there's reasons why those 2 weeks weren't good, as an example, you were sick and weren't working, or the business shut down for a specific reason, then you can elect to use different periods. If you weren't trading in 2019, you can still apply. You can elect to use a 2-week period from 1st of February to 28th of July, which I think is very generous, because during that whole period, you can basically find your highest trading 2-week period and compare it to your 2-week period since the lockdown to get to that 70% decline. So I think that's quite generous for new businesses, or for businesses where 2019 wasn't a good test period. So if there was bushfires, if you were sick and your business closed, if you had exceptional circumstances, you can use this alternate time frame. And so you can find a 2-week period where your trading revenue is nice and high and compare it to this 2-week period where you've been affected by the latest lockdown. This is a really simple example, and it's just showing a 2-week period here for 2019, a 2-week period in 2021. We're showing a decrease in revenue due to the lockdown of $8,000. So they've exceeded the 70% turnover decrease requirement. And so they may be eligible for the 70K. If you've got an accounting software, it might be really obvious where you've just had no revenue for 2 weeks now. And so to find the 70% decrease, you can just pick, that 2-week period. And if you've got any revenue, it's going to show a 70% decrease. If it's a bit trickier, you can run the sales on a daily basis to work out where you can find the highest 2-week period revenue versus the lowest 2-week revenue. And so this is an example of where the comparison period isn't good to use for 2019. So this might be a natural disaster, a sickness or injury. The business might have changed, might be a startup business. So it's basically saying, as I mentioned, you can elect to use the 1st of February this year to the 28th of July. So you can choose any 2-week period and compare that to the 2-week period where you've been affected and had no revenue or low revenue. You do need to use the grant funds on business expenses. So they've just put a list of things, but the general consensus is if you're spending it on business expenses, then you should be fine. So they're basically just saying, don't go spend it on personal expenses, spend it on the business expenses as it's intended to be used. How to apply? You can apply now through the Victorian website. And you may be asked for further information like sales data, BAS data. So that may get requested later when they're processing your grant. You will need the accountant's letter. So you'll need your accountant to provide the 2-week period decrease, the amounts, the percentage decrease, and why you're eligible, like verifying that you've met the other criteria of condition. They do have a templated letter for that. But if you speak to your accountant, they will need to work through and work through it with you, verify your eligibility, and then prepare that letter on your behalf to submit with your application. If you need a hand with that, we'd be happy to help you out. There is a closing date. It is the 10th of September. So you do need to get your application in prior to the 10th of September. Obviously, you'd get it in as soon as possible to receive that $10,000 payment. I might just see if there's any questions in the Q&A because we're moving on to a separate grant after this one. Was there anything specific?
A couple that have come up, Pat. I have a question here from Tarina around, do the 2 weeks need to be consecutive?
Yes, they do. They need to be consecutive.
Okay.
For the test and the current decline test period.
Okay. Okay. 2-week period on the calendar or any 2-week period within the period?
Yeah, any 2-week period within the period.
Okay, cool. I think largely then we've answered a lot of those, and a lot of them are just a lot of questions coming through around for new businesses as well. And if your business wasn't operating in 2019, but yeah, I think you've kind of covered that since then. So all good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just to clarify, new businesses, you can use a 2-week period prior. So from the 1st of February, I think it's to the 28th of July. So you can pick a 2-week period there to use for your test revenue to compare it against your current period.
And Pat, do you know if for the business hardship grant, if you need to be GST registered?
Yes, you do. So you need to be GST registered before the 28th of July, I believe.
Okay.
And I've just highlighted that here. So you need to be registered for GST. You don't need to be an employing business, but if you are, you just need to make sure you've complied with the work coverage insurance, etc.
And I don't know if you know, a couple of people have asked now, can that be backdated?
Can the GST registration?
Yes.
Generally, you can backdate GST registrations, but for the purposes of this, I'm not sure. So yeah, the answer is you can backdate a GST registration, but I'm not sure. I think I think there'd be something in there regarding if you're doing it just for the purposes of the grant, it's probably not allowed. But if you genuinely need to register for GST because you're going to exceed 75,000 in sales, then that could be okay. But I'd need to look into it. So if you wanted to check after this, that's something we could check.
Okay, fantastic.
Cool. So that's the hardship one that's just released. So basically, if you're not in the impacted list, that's a really great 10K cash boost that should be coming in pretty quickly. The business cost assistance program, that's been extended, and that's for basically businesses in the highly impacted list. It's a grant of up to $4,800, and the applications are open now. So if you are in a highly impacted industry, you might be eligible for this grant. So similar to the other one, you need to be located in Victoria. You can't have, your payroll can't exceed $10 million. You've got to be registered for GST. This one's different. On 15th of July, not the 28th. You need an ABN prior to the 15th of July. And if you have employees, same thing. You need to be registered for work cover insurance, etc. So this one is a continuation to the initial business cost assistance. So if you missed out on the June one, they're saying you can now receive this grant. You're not eligible for the extended grant if you've already got the business cost assistance. So it's basically if you haven't received it previously, but you are in the impacted industry, you can apply and get it now. And if you can't get it if you've got the licensed hospitality venue fund. And you can apply for the grant if you've received the business support fund, payroll tax rebate, and other COVID-19 programs. So I think it's pretty broad if you've applied for other grants. And similar thing, if you can only apply for this grant for per ABN. So obviously not twice through the one ABN. So you'll need a valid ABN. You'll need your work cover employer number, sorry, if you're an employer, and proof of identity to submit this claim. Similar to the other grants, and they're all pretty similar. You just need to spend it on business-related expenses, so nothing personal. And there's a round 3 coming out, which is important to note. And if you'd previously applied for the business assistance, you should automatically get this $2,800, so you don't need to apply for it. This should be happening now, so maybe people have already received it. So that's an automatic top-up payment, which is good. And if you apply for this extended one now, you will receive this top-up payment of $2,800. An FAQ question, can you apply for this if you're receiving the tourism support and previous top-up payments? Yes. So you can apply for that if you're receiving those other grants and payments. This one ties on to that grant specifically. So this one just got released as well. It's a further automatic payment, and it's basically if you've received the business cost assistance or the July extension, you'll automatically get this grant. So it's $5,000, and it's going to go to around 30,000 businesses that are in the highly impacted list. And if your postcode is in the CBD area, you should receive an additional $2,000 as well. They're probably not going to get paid together, so you should receive another $5,000 and $2,000 if you've received the business cost assistance round 2 or the extension. So if you apply for the extension now, because you didn't initially, if you're in the highly impacted list, then you could get the 4,800, and then in addition, you'll get the 5,000, and then in addition, you might get the 2,000 if you're within the CBD. I might go to Tom. Was there any questions around the business continuity or the business assistance grant?
Just had a couple of questions come through, Pat, around if you are only eligible for this if you employ staff.
Yeah, so I believe no. You can be eligible for this if you don't employ people. Definitely, it's only if you do employ people, you need to make sure you're registered. So if you're non-employing, you're still eligible for this grant.
Okay, I do have a question around industry as well, and if there is somewhere where there is a list of industries for the continuity funds. I don't know if you have that on hand, or maybe you can get Chris to dig that up.
Yeah, so it's just here. The list is just here. So we'll share these slides. It's list of eligible businesses. So if you click this link, it'll take you to the list of businesses. And if your business is registered, your ABN's registered under these codes, you should be able to access this grant. So there's a link in the slide, and that takes you to a specific list of all the businesses. I have had a look at it, and it's predominantly like retail, hospitality, tourism. There's some health, like dental, etc. There's yeah. So basically, those really high impacted businesses due to the lockdown.
Great, fantastic. We're getting just a number of questions now come through around recording as well. So just letting you know, this is being recorded, and we will be able to share a recording of this and the slides following on from this if you have joined us a little late.
Cool. So the Licensed Hospitality Venue Fund, they've released further funding for these businesses. So these are the businesses that hold specific licenses in the hospitality industry that are basically hospitality venues. So there's a further $7,200 grant for each eligible premises. This one will be open. So yeah, you need to set up an e-license email address. So that's important to do. And applications for the grant can only be submitted through the link emailed by Business Victoria. So basically the eligibility for this is you need to operate a licensed bar, restaurant, pub, club, hotel, cafe, or reception center that serves food and alcohol on premises. You may need to hold a general or late night license as well. You need to be registered for GST. You need an ABN, and you need a class 2 or 3 service sector certification for in relation to the Food Act. For employing businesses, the applicant must confirm the business is supporting its workers. So within the letter, you just need to stipulate that you're supporting your workers, and that would relate to access to paid leave, etc. So the applications are now open for that one, and they close very soon. And to do that, you just need the documents and the registration criteria, the ID, Medicare card, passport. So it's basically just verifying yourself and making sure you've got that e-license email address set up. You can't receive this grant if you've previously received the Licensed Hospitality Venue Fund that was the first one, and you can't receive the business cost assistance in addition to this grant. There is commercial tenancy relief scheme. The details around this are still yet to get released, so we're not sure, but they have allocated a pool of funds. Basically, for landlords that provide rent relief to tenants, they will be compensated for some of that relief, for some of that rent reduction, sorry. We're still to hear the exact details around how the application process and the eligibility criteria will work. But it is a good sign to note that if you can't pay rent, the landlord will get some assistance. So it's definitely a good thing. There's an Alpine business support program as well. Not sure how many people will be within this. It's really niche, so I won't really go into it in detail, but there's a link there if you want to find out more. One of the really cool things that they've had running for a while now is the Small Business Digital Adaptation Program. I'll let Tom talk about this one. It's specific. LawPath is offering this. It's a great initiative, and it's to get businesses going digital. So they're providing a $1,200 rebate to get access to a range of digital business tools. Did you want to touch base on this one, Tom?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered the basis of what's covered there. So the concept of the grant is really to help for businesses to be able to future-proof operations for moving into more of a digital environment. And we've been a member of this grant since the start of this year. And basically, the grant allows a business to take up a complimentary trial of a product, or try one of the different providers out, choose the product that's best suited for them to want to continue with using, and then be able to apply for a rebate to cover 12 months of access post the purchase of this. So I should note that this program, if you visit the government website, it has a mention that it is just about to be reopened. However, if you are wanting to get assistance with any of these suppliers, of which LawPath is one as well, you can actually purchase the product now and complete the application after the fact as well. So the only eligibility that's tied to this is that you need to have been classified as a business operating in Victoria, hold an ABN, and have held that ABN since the 13th of September 2019, as it really is aimed at businesses who haven't started up in the last 2 years. You can instantly check if you are eligible for this, and we can provide you with some additional information on how you can get access to this rebate if you head to the URL that Chris has just left in the chat. It'd be great to get in the chat too and hear if anybody has actually taken up the digital adaptation program just yet as well. I know, we have serviced a lot of customers who have then gone on and taken advantage of that. And if they have managed to receive their funding back from that, it looks like Ben has, Lucinda has, Nicole has as well. So, okay, it looks like we've got about 10 or so people who are on here. Wow, there's a lot that are coming through now who are mentioning that they have indeed received that back, and that they have received the money. And it usually has been taking about 6 weeks for that payment to come back. And we can assist with following up those applications should need be. So probably the best course of recourse is that check your eligibility on the link. You will need to have signed up for a LawPath account to access the link here, but it is a free sign up. So you just leave your contact details, and then that will be able to confirm if you are eligible or not for this $1,200 rebate. I'll pass back to you, Pat.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds great. Tons of value in that. Lots of resources, access to legal on demand. So yeah, it's a great product offering. So highly recommend people take it up if they haven't already. There's additional JobTrainer Apprentice supplement, and that is a one-off payment. It ranges based on the certification level of the JobTrainer Apprentice. The payments range from $750 to $4,000. So definitely check that out. If you have any apprentices, or if you're thinking of putting a trainee on, definitely click this link and see if you're eligible to receive this one-off payment. There's some payroll tax deferral as well, and there's also the a credit of 10 cents for every dollar of Victorian taxable wages paid. So that's quite a good incentive. The credit will be applied against the payroll tax liability at the end of the financial year. So basically what's going to happen is you'll get a tax credit. It'll get applied against your payroll tax liability. If you need advice regarding that, or if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us, or you can click that link below to find out more information. I think everyone's pretty across the disaster payments. They've been up for a while now. And basically, I think there's $750 a week at this point. It's kept changing. Depends on the amount of hours you've lost. So if you've lost 20 hours or more, you can get the $750 a week. If you've lost less than 20 hours, there's the $450 a week. There's a link there if you want to find out more about the disaster payment. I'll shoot to questions now and let Tom moderate. If you have any questions, now's a good time to reach out.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think specifically, thank you so much, Pat. I think one of the things that I've seen pop up here is that a lot of the questions have been answered as we have continued on. So if your question is still outstanding, feel free to submit it again, and we will try to tackle that, because I have had a lot of people come back and say, oh, my question has been answered with something now that's been said. Pat, the question that seems quite prominent in here is a lot of non-GST registered businesses asking if there is any sort of support specifically for them. I don't know if you can clarify if you know of anyone that's specifically for non-GST registered businesses and their best avenue for getting some support.
Yeah, I think the disaster payment, definitely, if you've lost revenue, I think that's probably the fastest and simplest support to access. Unfortunately, for the other support, there is that GST registration requirement. It does say you needed to be registered prior to the 28th of July or the 15th of July for the business assistance. So if you aren't registered for GST, I believe the disaster payment would be the most beneficial. But in saying that, definitely get in touch. Feel free to get in touch with us and we can look at your individual situation and see what's out there, because there is a fair bit floating around. But for these grants that have just been released, that's the requirement. You do need to be registered for GST.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. We've got a couple of questions that have come through again around payment periods. Like comparable periods of looking at turnover. So there's a question here from someone who said, as a consultant, my invoices are paid in big chunks, so I often have weeks with absolutely no income. Is that a problem for showing a change from 2019 to 2021?
Yeah, so basically what they've said is you need to compare when there's a normal level of trading activity. If you've got lump sums and you've lost your revenue, but you do get paid in lump sums, I suggest you reach out to Pop or your accountant who will be able to assist you. They've been pretty generous around the comparison period. Like they've basically said, if 2019 is not a good test period because trading activity wasn't normal, you can use from 1 February to 28th of July. Now, I'm sure you could find your lumpy income within that period. It's quite a long time. It's nearly over 6 months. So in saying that, if you found the 2 week with the no income, where you've been affected by the lockdown, and the comparison period in 2019 isn't suitable because you didn't receive any income because you get paid in lumpy transactions, you should be able to use the alternative test period, which is the 1st of February to the 28th of July. And I believe you'd need to include why you're using that period. So you need to put some description. The key with this is giving the people processing the claim enough information to make a quick decision and see if you check your eligibility. And if it checks out, push it through. They're going to get thousands of these applications. So the more detailed it is, the less questions they'll ask, the less back and forth, and the less delay in receiving the cash.
Okay, fantastic. Just a reminder to everyone who is in the chat, a reminder to leave the questions in the Q&A if you are wanting to get those ones answered, just so that we can better deal with the ones that are coming through. Question here from Kate: if people have previously received a disaster payment for July 21, do they need to reapply, or is it automatic?
The disaster payment, I believe that's automatic. That should keep going, I believe.
Okay, great. Question that similar to what we've had with some of our New South Wales sessions, Pat, is the comparison cash or accrual? Got a question here.
Yeah, I would do it based on the GST registration. So if you're registered on an accrual basis, do it as accrual. If you're registered on a cash basis, do it as cash. It doesn't specifically say that, but it doesn't mention cash or accrual anywhere. But the New South Wales one was a bit more specific. It's pretty much really similar to this grant, same requirements for the test periods, and that the difference was you couldn't change the 2-week period. It had to be the exact date, whereas this one's a lot more flexible. I think you could, because it doesn't mention it, I believe you could probably, it doesn't mention it anywhere, so I believe you could probably choose, but I would do it based on my GST registration to reduce the risk of it coming back and requiring you to go and do further calculations, etc. If it doesn't work on either one and there's a specific reason, then yeah, you could look at the alternative GST registration.
Okay, fantastic. Just having a look through some of the questions we have here. So probably one of the things that I've seen come up, Pat, a lot is people just wanting to know what support is available to them, maybe in just a concise way, and wanting to deal with that. If you're a small business, you want to know there's all these different grants that are going there. What would you say would be the next step that you would take for being able to see what support is available to you, and B, how to make the most of that?
Yeah, certainly. I would click into the list of eligible businesses for the business assistance grant, and I would check firstly I would make sure I'm GST registered, got my ABN, and satisfy most of these requirements. I check the list of eligible businesses because they have really clearly split the grants based on industry. So I would check if your business is in the list of eligible classes, and that will tell you where you're going to apply. So if you're in an eligible class, it's most likely that the business cost assistance is the best grant. So you can apply for that. So you'll just need to check if your business is within that list. If it's not in that list, then it's going to be the one-off $10,000 payment, the COVID Business Hardship Fund. So yeah, if your business isn't in the industries list, you'd come here and you'd work through these requirements. Make sure you satisfy the 2-week decline test. If you're not sure, you can get your accountant to do it for you. You can say, I'm just not sure whether I reached the 70%. Could you please check? Just make sure they're aware of the alternative test period options. If 2019 wasn't a good test period. So basically, I'd check the industry list. If I wasn't on the industry list, like if I'm in construction as an example, or if I'm in professional services, I'd go, okay, I'm not on the highly impacted industry list. Now I'm going to check whether I satisfy the hardship requirements. If so, I'm going to get in touch with my accountant and get the accountant's letter prepared so I can speed up getting the cash. And I'd also be looking at getting the disaster payments as well if I'm affected and my hours have been slashed. If you're in hospitality, then you should be looking at the requirements for the hospitality fund. It's a little bit more complex, so you can get in touch with your accountant to make sure it's getting done correctly. And there is a business continuity fund. You don't have to do anything for that. So that's just if you're in the highly impacted list. So if you just wanted a snapshot, is your business in the highly impacted list? Yes. Okay, let's apply for the business assistance extended grant here. The July extension for that one, and that's available now. If your business is not in the highly impacted list, then you'd come here. If you missed the business assistance one for any reason, you can also apply for this one as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for going through that. Yeah, I think it's really working out for a lot of these businesses how to navigate through all of the different parts. I think that's been really useful to cover. Checking where first to have a look, and then who to catch up with, following on from seeing where you're going to need that support. And we've got a few more that have come through since then that we've a question from Terry is, do you need the accountant's letter for the disaster payment?
No, not for the disaster payment.
Okay, that's an easy one to answer. So we are still getting a few questions around the highly impacted business list. Yep. So we can provide a link to that I think Chris has now shared in the chat. Okay, we've answered a few of these already. Question here around turnover. Do we check turnover as a whole or only for particular services or products that we sold in 2019?
It's a good question. Yeah, probably should go into turnover a little bit more. Just to be clear, your turnover is after GST, so it's your net amount. So your total sales less GST, and that's usually what's on your profit and loss statement if you're registered for GST. So if you're just checking your sales account on your profit and loss, that's what it is. And it's only your GST applicable sales. So if you've got sales in there that don't contribute towards your, if you wouldn't include it in your BAS as an example, in your total sales in your BAS, you wouldn't do it. There's a specific list which I can add. I think if you click into, I'll just show you guys so you can find it. But if you click into this link here, it's basically just under the COVID Hardship Fund. It does have the details. And if you're unsure about turnover, most people, it'll just be like your usual sales. If you've got unique circumstances where you're getting like different types of income that are like, could be disbursements getting repaid, could be other income, you could be getting government income, there could be a whole range of types of income. There's a specific list in here that tells you what income to include, but just generally speaking, it's just your usual business sales.
Okay, great. Thanks for clearing that one up. Date. So just to answer this one, Michaela, the date your ABN had to be registered for the Victorian grant of $1,200. I think that's the digital adaptation program you're referring to there. So it's from the 13th of September 2019. If you've registered before that, you will be eligible if you are a Victorian business. Yes, Ian, just to clarify again, yes, we will be sharing a recording of this webinar and access to the slides for that as well. A few more questions around eligibility, but I think a lot of these are specifically for people's own use cases. Okay, there's a question here. I don't know if you can help with this one, Pat. Business that have not had the round one business grant processed yet as it's still pending. The ATO advised to apply for the round two because if the round one is not approved, you will not automatically get the following payments. So.
Yeah, I think that's the business assistance grant that he's referring to. And it's basically, if you haven't received the initial one, they're saying to apply for this one, you'll only get it once. is my understanding, and then you'll automatically get the business continuity afterwards.
Okay. Got a couple of questions that have come through, Pat, around not-for-profits as well. And so I don't know if they're specifically, I don't know what grant Douglas is referring to here, but saying, can a non-for-profit registered from the start of 2021 apply for the grant? We had a question before about a charitable organization as well.
Yeah, so not-for-profits can apply. So yeah, there is specific mention in if you click on the link here for the Hardship Fund grant, there is specific mention that not-for-profits can apply. They do need to be registered for GST. Not-for-profits have a different threshold, so it's not $75,000, it's $150,000. But you do need to be registered for GST, so I suppose that's the unique sort of, just the threshold's different, but you do need to be registered.
Okay, cool. Question here from David. Good question, this one. Do the business assistance grants require any acquittal, or are they time sensitive in terms of using the funding for business purposes within a set period of time?
That's a good question. So he's basically saying, if you don't spend the cash now, is it time sensitive on when you spend the cash? Yeah. I didn't see anything potentially, but yeah, I haven't seen anything regarding that. I think it does mention that you do need to spend it on business expenses, but I didn't see. So again, this one had less information, but the New South Wales one was very similar, and they did say you needed to keep records for up to 5 years on where you spent the expenses. So with that in mind, I believe when you do finally spend the money, as long as it's on the business expenses, I'm sure that should be okay. I didn't see any time limit.
Okay. Got two more questions. We might close up on these two questions, Pat. The first one is, what if I have 2 weeks decreased by 70%, but overall sales are not decreased at all? Am I still eligible?
Yeah. Yeah, so as long as you can show the 70% decrease, that's the key, right? So if you can show for a 2-week period, your sales have decreased by 70% or more, it doesn't really, the number is irrelevant. You're looking at the percentage decline. That's what you're trying to determine whether you meet this requirement.
And then final question here, for the grants that have already closed, is there a way we can apply, or are they dead and buried?
So I think I think they're dead and buried. I think this grant is an extension, so they have reopened it, but you need to get onto it today. Well, it says until the funds are exhausted, so whichever is earlier. It says the 13th of August. I don't believe they're exhausted yet, so I'm not sure how longer they'll keep this one open, but this is an extension, so they have extended it. It's the exact same as the initial one. So yeah, for that one, you can still get it. It's the exact same as per the hospitality fund one. So it did finish, and then they've basically done a July extension for people that weren't eligible in June. So they've said if you're now eligible and you're now affected, you can still apply and get it. So there is a couple of extensions, and this hardship grant's only just open. So I think, like, if you're affected now and you can sort of get the application happening, I think you shouldn't be adversely affected by the closed grants.
Great. I think it is an important point to point out too, that we do see a lot of the time that businesses not jumping on the grants as soon as possible can cause problems down the track. So I think, you know, that might be something to take into account, is when these are available to you, it's best to be really proactive in getting on the front foot and being able to get that, to ensure that you don't miss out there as well, because we have seen that across a number of grants. I'm sure you've seen the same, Pat.
Yeah.
Awesome. And to finish up, I think really important question to ask is, Pat, how can people get in touch with you and the team? What's the best way of being able to get assistance beyond today?
Yeah, sure. If you need, so we're an online chartered accounting firm, and if you need any help with your accounting and tax, or if you need any assistance with any of the grants, we can definitely assist. I believe Chris is sharing a link in the comments section. So there'll be a contact page to get in touch. Otherwise, you can look us up, Pop Business, and we'd be happy to help you in your business.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure that we send all of the details over in a follow-up email to all of the attendees as well. So keep an eye on your inbox this afternoon. We will be sending a recording, the slides, and then all of the different ways of being able to get recourse, being to get in touch with Pat and the team from POP, and then also on how you can take activity around the Small Business Digital Adaptation Program. So keep an eye out on your inbox this afternoon. We'll send all of those details across. But I want to once again thank everybody for attending today, taking the time out of what is a really crazy busy time to be able to just cover off on that. And hopefully we were able to provide a bit of clarity on some of the support that is available to your business. And as we know of more information, we'll look to run additional sessions on this as well. But another really big thanks to Pat to taking that time to be able to go through this with us and covering all of the different grants available and being able to clarify those few questions. I think we're really fortunate for our members to be able to access that from you, Pat. So thanks again for being able to make yourself available for it.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining, guys.
Have a great day, guys. Keep an eye on your inbox for all of the information, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.